Did you know that Georgia led the country in investors flipping homes last year? Flipped homes are one of the biggest traps in the Atlanta market right now, or maybe just in the housing market in general. And nobody's talking about it. I've been selling real estate in Atlanta for years, and I walk through a lot of homes. Some of them are great. Brand new kitchen, fresh paint, luxury vinyl plank flooring throughout, quartz countertops. You walk in and you think, okay, someone did all the work. This is move-in ready. Let's write an offer. And here's the thing. If you are someone who is actively shopping in town Atlanta right now, so I'm talking Kirkwood, East Atlanta, Decatur, Grant Park, you are going to run into flips, a lot of them. So if you buy one of those homes without knowing what to look for, it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars and major headaches. Let me give you a little context first. Back in 2020 and 2021, when interest rates were 3% and below, rates dropped to historic lows. Investors piled into Atlanta, small LLCs, individual investors, regional flipping operations. They were buying up the bungalows in Kirkwood and Edgewood and Grant Park faster than you could blink. The math made sense for them at the time, and fast forward to today, profit margins on flips have actually been compressing big time. Nationally, flippers are seeing their thinnest returns in nearly 2 decades, but they're still selling. And in Atlanta specifically, Georgia has been one of the hottest flipping markets in the entire country. So what does this mean for you as a buyer? It means there's more pressure on investors' bottom line, which means more incentive to cut the corners, which means you need to know exactly what you're looking for before you walk through one of these homes. Okay, point one, the pretty design is there to distract you. The whole model is built around making the house look brand new without necessarily making it function like one. Fresh paint, new counters, new cabinets, new light fixtures. These things cost relatively little compared to the big ticket items. And that's where the problem hides. I'm talking about the HVAC system, the water heater, the roof, the windows, the foundation. There are things that will cost you a lot of money if they fail. And they're things that investors are most likely to leave alone because replacing them eats directly into their profit, and you as the buyer these aren't things that you really notice. I've walked into flips where the kitchen looked like it came out of a magazine and the HVAC system was original. We're talking about 20 plus years old. Nobody disclosed it up front and it showed up in the home inspection. And at that point, you have to decide as a buyer, do I ask for a credit? Do I walk? Or do I just accept that I'm inheriting the problem? The prettier the renovation, the harder you need to look underneath it. That's just the reality. Point two, hidden problems are a real thing. Water damage is one of the most common things that gets covered up in a flip. You paint over it, you put up some new drywall, and it looks fine until it doesn't. Mold is the same story. Some fresh paint, and you would never know it was there at first glance. Now, Georgia has disclosure law. Sellers are required to disclose known defects, but here's the issues with flippers specifically. They genuinely don't know the history of the house. They've owned it for a matter of months. They weren't living in it, and so if water came in during a storm 2 years ago and the previous owner just patched it themselves, the flipper may have no idea. The gap in knowledge is its own problem. When you buy from someone who's lived in a home for 10 years, they can tell you all the things. Where it flooded, when it flooded, what the neighbor situation is, whether the basement takes on water when it rains hard. A flipper can't tell you any of that because they weren't there. Point three, no warranties, and that can matter. When you buy a new construction from a licensed builder in Georgia, you typically get some sort of warranty coverage. If something breaks in the first year, it's on them. Structural defects, even longer. When you buy a flipped home, you get none of that. The work was done by whoever the investor hired, and the quality of that work varies wildly. I've seen flips done beautifully by investors who take real pride in the product. I've also seen flips where the grout was already cracking 6 months after closing, and there's no accountability built into the model the way that there is with a builder. If something fails after you close, it's on you. And that's a real risk that doesn't always show up in the listing photos. Point 4, the flip math is working against you. Here's something most buyers don't think about when they walk into a home that's been flipped. Every choice that investor made was made with a math decision, not a design decision and not what would the next buyer love decision, a math decision. What's the cheapest finish that still photographs well? What's the fastest install? What product is in stock and the cheapest? That's what they go for. What looks good on day one and gets you to closing the fastest? That mindset shows up in the house if you know where to look. Okay, start with the floors. A lot of flips are using the cheapest tier of luxury vinyl plank they can find. The stuff that looks great in listing photos and starts telegraphing every subfloor imperfection within a year. You can usually feel it when you walk over it. If the floor has any give underfoot or you hear a little hollow sound, that's a thin product over a subfloor that wasn't properly prepped. Real LVP installed correctly is solid and will likely last you a lifetime. You shouldn't be able to feel the seams, and look at the trim and the caulk lines. This is the tell I rely on most. A flipper who cared about the work has clean caulk at every baseboard, every door casing, every transition. A flipper who was racing the clock has gaps, smears, paint slopped over the caulk, baseboards, they don't quite meet the floor. The trim is where rushed labor shows up first because it's the last thing they do before they're trying to get the listing on the market. Open the cabinet doors, not to check the inside, but to check the hinges and the box. New cabinet fronts on old boxes is a common move. If the cabinet face is bright and white and the interior is yellow and builder grade from 2003, you're looking at a reface, not a renovation. Same with the drawers. Pull all of them out one at a time. If it's particle board with staples, that's not a new cabinet. That's a new door on something old. And here's another big one. Check the outlets and switches. Are they new? Do the cover plates sit flush against the wall? Or are there paint smears across the outlets themselves, which we see all the time? Painted over outlets are a small thing, but it tells you that nobody pulled them off before painting, which means the painters were moving fast, which is information about how the rest of the work probably went. And then look up. Look at where the ceiling meets the wall. Look at the recessed light trim. Look at the HVAC vents. Are they new vents or are they original vents that were just painted to match? Original vents on a fully renovated home means the ductwork is probably original too. That's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it tells you that the renovation stopped at the surface. None of these things are absolutely catastrophic on their own, but they add up to a big picture. And then that picture tells you whether you're looking at a flip done by someone who took pride in their work or a flip done by someone who needed to close and move on. So I know what some of you guys are thinking. Atlanta is not the most affordable city anymore, and sometimes people just don't have the cash to do a renovation, and sometimes a flip is your best option. So what do you do if you find one and you love it? Here's the thing. I'm not telling you to never, ever, ever buy a flipped home. I'm just telling you to buy one with your eyes open. And if you're shopping in town Atlanta right now, you don't always have the luxury of avoiding them. They're everywhere. So here's what I would do. First, bring in a thorough home inspector, someone who's going to get up in the attic, into the crawl space if there is one. They're going to pull the cover off of the electrical panel and actually look, not just walk through ticking boxes. This is your biggest protection in the gap between A great inspector and an average one is the difference between catching a problem and inheriting it. Second, bring in a specialist for things a general home inspector isn't equipped to assess. If the home has a chimney, get a chimney inspector. If there's any sign of water history, get a professional crawl space company in there. If the foundation looks off to you, get a structural engineer. These things cost a few $100s each, but it can save you from a catastrophic surprise. And third, this is the one buyers skip often because they get emotionally attached to a move-in ready looking house. Negotiate based on what you find. If the HVAC is old, ask for a credit. If there's no warranty on the renovation work, factor that into your offer. You can love the house and still protect yourself financially. Those two things are not in conflict. And here's the thing, always, always, always get a survey. This is the one buyers skip the most, and it's the one that bites people on flips specifically. Investors are not in that house long enough to know exactly where the property lines actually are. They didn't deal with the neighbor's fence. They didn't deal with the shed that's sitting 2 feet over the property line. They didn't have to think about the easement running through the backyard. They renovated the house within a matter of weeks and they moved on. I've seen it more than once on in-town lots, especially in older neighborhoods. And the original lot lines can sometimes be weird. Fences have been moved over the years and nobody's checked it in decades. You can close on the house, you can move in, and 6 months later you find out that the driveway that you thought was yours was partially on the neighbor's lot. Or there's a utility easement that nobody mentioned and that limits what you can do in your backyard. A survey runs about $1,000, and on a $700,000 purchase, that is the cheapest insurance policy you will ever buy. Get it. Every time, especially on homes that have been flipped. The higher the price point, the more rigorous due diligence needs to be. A better inspector, more specialists, a survey in hand before you close and you sign the paperwork. The renovation is not supposed to make you lazy. It's supposed to make you more skeptical, not less. Speaking of surveys, I had a deal last year where one phone call saved my clients from a $725,000 mistake. The story is in this next video. Go watch it. I hope to see you over there.